Leaders, real life leaders.
Because if you as their leader don't know what winning looks like, then you don't know if they're doing a good job. And if the employee doesn't know what winning looks like, they don't know what's expected of them.
Welcome to the Real Life Leadership Podcast, where we share real life stories from real life leaders to help you become a better leader for your organization. I'm Chantel Ray, and each week I'm joined by a different leader. And today I'm joined by Heather Roemmich. Welcome, Heather.
Welcome. Hello.
All right. Well, this show today is called It's Not Okay to Quit Your Job, but Still Come to Work. So this is an episode where we're saying what happens when an employee still shows up to work, but has clearly stopped trying. They have just quit their job, but they're still coming to work and just kind of pretending like they're working every day.
Yeah, they've totally mentally, physically checked out.
So one of the things that we're going to talk about today is a real life story, and this is actually with my company. And Heather, tell what happened.
Yeah, so basically, we had an employee in one of our departments, and their main job is they're answering incoming calls, and they are placing outbound calls to leads to try to get business and appointments for our clients. So their ultimate goal is to set appointments, and it's not the most thrilling job in the world. Actually, if I had to do it, I would probably want to pluck my eyeballs out.
Well, it's because it's a lot.
It's tedious.
And it's a lot of outbound calls.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to sit there and dial. You get a lot of rejections.
Yeah.
So it's just tough.
It's tough. It takes a special person.
And a lot of grit.
Yes, it takes a lot of grit. But this department really drives the overall success of our company. Without them, we don't have business to give to our clients. So
we're going to call this employee David.
Okay.
Let's just actually tell the story. We're going to call his name David.
So David was showing up on our performance reports near the bottom. And after a couple of documented conversations, we decided that, David just didn't have a place on our team anymore. He'd kind of quit without quitting. He was showing up every day, but he'd quit his job.
He just mentally quit.
Yeah, he wasn't there anymore. So once, David said that the decision was a surprise to him, and he just didn't understand why we were letting him go. And he also thought that there were other people on the team who had, that were lower performers than he was. And so after he left our team, he ended up, posting some vocal criticism about the company on social media. And in the public criticism, he also thought that race played a factor in the decision, because he thought that one of the other team members who was not let go had lower performance than him. So what are some of the things we could take away from this story that we can kind of learn from and change?
Basically he said, because I'm black, that's why I was let go.
First problem that we have here is, why did David not know where he stood on the team? That was the first issue that we kind of encountered. And what we realized was that we did not have clear performance metrics laid out for them, so they understood what they were to do.
Yeah, so
it was
one of the things
muddy.
we now have on every report is, what does winning look like? So that is a really important piece, that every single job, in other people, they call them KRAs, key results areas. We never use that, because it's like, KRAs, what is that? Blah, blah, blah. No, we just say, what does winning look like for every single job? What does winning look like?
Yeah, and it's really important, because if you as their leader don't know what winning looks like, then you don't know if they're doing a good job. And if the employee doesn't know what winning looks like, they don't know what's expected of them. So there's a couple of things when you're figuring out what winning looks like. I think that as a leadership team, there's two different things you need to do. You as the leader of them need to write what you think winning looks like for their position, but you also need to have them write what they think winning looks like in their position.
So let's talk about the three areas. Let's really dial in for our inside sales team. What are the three areas where we say we measure what does winning look like for them in their department? Yeah,
so there's three different key areas we look at. One is, how many outbound dials are they making a day? So there's a required amount of actual calls they're required to make each day. It's really simple. They come in and they know they have to make 50 seller calls and 50 buyer calls. Plain and simple, no questions asked. The second one is
and so for that scenario, this is a perfect example. He was coming in and maybe making 30 calls to sellers and 30 calls to buyers when we clearly said, hey, you've got to make 50 per day. And it shows, I mean, that's not a matter of skill. That's a matter of will. That's just, we know with your eyes closed, you should be able to call that many people in an 8-hour span, right?
Right.
So if you're not doing it, that's what we're talking about. We're saying, look, it's not okay to quit your job. You're basically quitting your job when you're just flat out saying, I'm not going to make those calls.
Right. The second one was how many appointments are they setting a day? So they're required to set a minimum of 7 appointments a day. Really simple. That's how many it is. So now we have up on the screen, they can see as throughout the day where their progress is of how many they're setting. And the third area is the show percentage. So how many of the appointments that they set actually showed up to meet the agent, and that we want them to be at a 50% show conversion. And so now they have these 3 key results areas, or what winning looks like, up there on their screen so they can see it every day.
Actually, 50% is the absolute minimum. 70% is the goal.
Right.
So it's like if you're doing 50%, you have less than 50%, then we just know there's major problems.
Right.
But talk about why some people don't show and what that show percentage means.
Yeah, so there's a range of factors of why people don't show. One is that maybe a tentative appointment was set, so the client didn't think that it was a real set in stone appointment. One is they talked to a lender beforehand and realized they're not pre-qualified, so they canceled the appointment thinking it'll be a waste of their time. One is, life gets in the way, and some people just don't. One of our core values here is let your yes be yes and your no be no. And unfortunately, that's just not a lot of people's core values. They'll say yes to something and then they just don't show up for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so
or they just get home from work and they're exhausted tired. And they're like, forget it, I'm not in the mood.
Yeah, and they don't want to get back out in traffic. It's raining, the kid's sick. There's all kinds of different factors that play in why they don't show up. But that's why, we really, really want to push them to set quality appointments that are setting up. And that's why we're looking at their show percentage. Because if we just looked at how many appointments they set, they could set 25 a day, but 21 of them don't show up.
Yeah, and I think in the beginning, one of the things that we do a really good job of is when they are when it's a job that we've had for a long time. Let's say it's a branch office administrator or a transaction coordinator. It's pretty clear. We have really defined things where we go, look, here's what winning looks like. Every day you've got to do A, B, C, D, and E. Here's your goals. Here's what it looks like. The problem comes in when the job description changes a little bit, or the problem comes in when we create a brand new job and we're like, oh, we need this, right? So like we just hired a web intern. Well, with that web intern, before we hired that person, did we create a what does winning look like for this person?
Right.
Right.
And that should ideally be created before the job is ever even posted.
Yeah. So we need a very clear job description when they come in that says, here's what that job looks like. Number 2, they need like a daily check, like a daily, a weekly, and a monthly checklist. Like every day, here's what I need to be doing. Every week, here's what I need to be doing. Every month, here's what I need to be doing. And here's the goals I need to be hitting in order for this job to be productive and add value to the company.
Right. I think another thing too is having them, once they're hired, write down what winning looks like back to you so that you make sure that they understood when you described to them, this is what winning looks like for your job, and they agreed to that. Then having them actually write it back down on paper and give it back to you to make sure there was clear communication there. Because I think sometimes, what people say and what people hear are two different things, and you want to make sure that is really, really clear what winning looks like.
And how many times have we had it where people are like, we've literally written it down, and we've had them sign it, and they're like, well, I had no idea I had to do A, B, C, and D. And we're like, okay, let's pull out the sheet. And then we pull out the sheet and they're like, oh, I must have missed that. So because people are not, they don't, like me, I don't like to read.
Right.
So I'll sign it without actually reading it. So that piece that you just said of having them repeat back to you.
Right.
Do you understand what you're in charge of doing every single day?
Yeah.
And number 2, do you understand I love that phrase. What does winning look like? For
Right.
you to be employed here and for you to maintain this job, what does winning look like? And I would say we have it for about, unfortunately, we have it for all of our key roles.
Yeah.
And so it's like 80 to 90% of our positions have that.
Yeah.
I think it's our newer positions that don't. And it's also just, there's a couple of positions that are harder
Sure.
to like have that. And we
Yeah.
just need to dial in and go, every position has to have that no matter what. Otherwise, why do we have the position?
Right, exactly. And I think it's really important that we also are measuring those what winning looks like every year, sometimes a couple times a year.
I think every quarter.
Yeah.
Every quarter. Well, first of all, one of the things we do is talk about our monthly report card. So
Yeah.
every person has a monthly report card of what they should be checking off
Yeah.
each month. So give an example of one.
Yeah, so let's talk about like our managing partners, for
Okay.
instance. Okay, so they have a monthly report card. It looks at several different things. One, it looks at how many agents did they hire. So their main job is to recruit agents to grow their office.
We'll talk about CPR.
Yeah,
so we have
CPR.
a code word
Yep.
for managing partner.
So CPR, like what keeps your office alive? So C is for conversion, helping agents convert the leads and appointments that they're getting. P is for production, so helping push their agents to produce. We don't like to
if
have
they don't want
non-producing
leads, if they're a
agents.
seasoned agent, they go, we don't need leads.
Yeah.
We can do our own. Great.
Yeah, that's fine.
They just still want to be able, we want to get them producing more.
Right. And lastly, R is the recruiting. So the only way your office can grow is to recruit. Every business has natural attrition. So people are going to leave and move out of the area and do different things. So it looks at those three different areas. It looks at how many people they hired each month, and they get a percentage based on that. It looks at how many people they lost that month, because attrition is also, we want to make sure we're keeping the agents that we are hiring. It looks at their conversion percentages. So of the appointments that their agents in their office were given, how many of them did they actually convert to, a buyer, broker, or listing? That's what we call them here in Virginia. And then of those that they actually converted, it looks at a ratified percentage. So how many of those they actually get under contract? And then it looks at their volume. So that's the production. Of the agents that they have, what is the production of those, and what was their volume based on, year over year, how much they've increased the office and what they're budgeted to. And it takes all of that and it spits out a score. And our scores are 1 to 5. So a 5 means you are just doing an amazing job.
But it specifically says,
Yeah.
if you hire this many people, then you get a 5.
Yep.
If you hire this many people, you get a 4. If
Right.
you hire this many, you get a, but every single position needs to have that and a rating score. And then we actually play a song. So when you're hitting a 5, we're like, man, that's when
Yeah.
we play the song.
All I do is win, no matter what.
Yep,
Right?
between a 4 and a 5.
Yeah, if you're doing a 4 or 5, you're just knocking it out of the park. If you're doing a 3 to a 4, that means you're just doing mediocre. Like, you're doing okay.
You're doing the bare minimums of your job. Like
yeah.
you're doing an okay job. You're doing what's required of your job, but you're not doing that great.
And once a month, we literally all sit down as leadership team and go, okay, what is your report card? And we play that song.
We do.
So we say, okay, we do the either all I do is win song, or I do the I don't want no mediocre.
Yeah.
Want it bad, cause I don't want no mediocre. Don't want no mediocre. I don't want no mediocre.
We kind of try to make it a fun way, but also, people don't want to stand during that song, so it encourages them to try to get up to that higher, push themselves. They know what their report card is.
There's times where we have to review, because like we had one person one time, remember, and like for 2 months in a row, we knew their performance wasn't that good.
Right.
But they were like singing and dancing to the all I do is win
Yeah.
and dancing. And I'm thinking to myself, someone's got to review that.
Yeah.
What does winning look like?
Yes.
Report card.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, that person's not killing it.
Right.
So we have to go back through and say, all right, this isn't working.
Yeah, especially if you have a growing company and you're changing a lot because you're growing, you're in a market that's changing. You do have to revisit what winning looks like frequently, because their role is going to change. They're going to add more stuff on. And so if they're hitting 5s every month, you need to look at it, because that's not stretching them. They need to be, it needs to get them to kind of push a little bit to grow. That's how you grow leaders. That's how you grow your employees. And that's how you grow your company.
Yeah. So the moral of the story today is that everyone needs, the manager and the employee needs to know, what does winning look like? And it needs to be clear as mud. Joke. That's a joke. But it really does. It needs to be crystal clear.
Yeah.
And you just need to tweak it every quarter.
And not only do you have it, you need to hold people accountable to it.
Yes.
That's the big thing. A lot of people will say, oh yeah, I know what winning looks like, but we don't really check up on it. No, you need to hold them accountable.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Real Life Leadership. If you'd like to get the show notes or access more resources, log on to reallifeleaders.com/podcast to get the show notes from this episode and any other resources we might have mentioned. And also, we'd love to hear from you. Be sure to review or rate this podcast on Apple Podcasts to help spread the word. And if you have any leadership questions you want answered, email podcast@reallifeleaders.com.